Every country on Earth is in debt. America's debt has now passed $38 trillion, the highest in its history. The European Union carries around 14 trillion. Japan is close to 9 trillion. Even oil-rich Saudi Arabia, or export giants like Germany and China, hold massive debt loads. So here's the strange part. If everyone owes money, who exactly is it owed to? When you look at financial history, money, power, and the past blur together. Nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Debt isn't just a burden, it's the skeleton of the modern world. Wars, crises, booms, collapses, all of them rest on a hidden structure of IOUs, and when you follow that chain long enough, you stumble upon something unsettling. The world doesn't really owe money to someone else. It owes it to itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. Today, the world runs on more than $315 trillion of total debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy. How did we get here? To answer that, we have to go back centuries, long before credit cards and digital transfers, to the birth of national debt. And that story doesn't start on Wall Street, but on the battlefield. In 1694, England was at war with France and running out of gold. The king turned to merchants for help. In exchange for a permanent stream of interest payments backed by future taxes, they financed the crown. To manage this new structure, the Bank of England was created. This was revolutionary. The state could now spend money it didn't yet have. Lenders in return received something priceless, a government promise to pay interest, a promise that could be bought and sold. That was the birth of the government bond. France copied the idea, the Netherlands perfected it, the newly independent United States adopted it to fund its revolution and later its westward expansion. National debt became not a symbol of weakness, but of credibility. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Empires once seized land to extract gold. Now they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield became the balance sheet. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt is now the world's dominant export. The U.S. owes $38 trillion. Japan over $9 trillion. The world takes on another $1 trillion of debt. Every 100 days, every country owes, every bank lends, every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pensions, is both debtor and creditor. So, who holds the other end of the rope? Let's start with the United States, because American debt isn't just national, it's global. Of the $38 trillion, roughly half is publicly held, meaning owed to investors. About 2/3 of those investors are American. Banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining third, around $9 trillion, belongs to foreign holders. Japan leads with about $1 trillion. China follows with around $800 billion. Then the UK, Luxembourg, Belgium. So when people say America is in debt to China, it's technically true, but only about 2% of the total. In reality, America owes most of its debt to America. The Treasury issues bonds, banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve sometimes buys them back, creating new dollars. Americans pay taxes, which fund interest payments, and those payments go right back into American retirement accounts. It's a closed loop. The debt is real, but the creditor is mostly the system itself. And this circularity isn't unique to America. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S. lends to Europe via the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations via the World Bank. Those nations then lend back to advanced economies by holding foreign reserves in Western bonds. It's a global hot potato game. Everyone holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is backed by another promise. Imagine a poker table where every player is gambling with borrowed chips, and the only rule is nobody stands up. Then comes the most powerful layer, the markets. Behind every government bond sits a web of institutions, hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, central banks, managing tens of trillions. These institutions decide which countries can borrow cheaply and which must pay a premium just to survive. When confidence disappears, currencies crash, governments fall, and economies can be rewritten overnight. Democracy decides who governs. Markets decide who survives. And at the center of this system stands the modern high priest, the central bank. Central banks don't just manage debt. They create it. When the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, it creates new money in exchange. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every dollar in circulation represents a unit of debt somewhere else. Debt-free money does not exist. Every bill and every digital dollar carries an invisible IOU. For decades, this loop has survived through confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if the principal is never repaid, the machine keeps running. But when confidence wavers, chaos follows. We've seen it. In Greece in 2010, government debt became unpayable. Bondholders panicked. Yields spiked. The ECB and IMF intervened with harsh conditions, tax hikes, spending cuts, mass unemployment. An entire generation learned that bailout could also mean sacrifice. Argentina endured repeated defaults. Sri Lanka faced fuel shortages and political collapse when it ran out of foreign currency to service loans. When the system breaks, creditors suddenly gain faces. The IMF, ratings agencies, anonymous bondholders. Yet even after collapse, the same logic restarts. Old debts are restructured, new loans replace them. The machine resets with the same balance sheet under new names. Because in the 21st century, debt isn't designed to be repaid, it's designed to be rolled over. Governments don't plan to pay off their debt. Not now, not ever. That's not a conspiracy, it's policy. Individuals must repay loans. Governments refinance them. Interest is the real product, the rent charged for stability. The modern economy depends on it. Like a shark needing to swim to breathe, the system needs debt to keep moving. The U.S. will never clear its $38 trillion debt. It will keep refinancing it. Japan has rolled over its debt for decades. It now exceeds 250% of GDP, yet yields remain near zero. Investors aren't waiting to be repaid. They're waiting to renew the agreement. Why? Because government debt is the safest collateral on earth. A U.S. Treasury bond isn't viewed as a liability, it's an asset. The foundation of global markets. Pension funds hold it. Banks rely on it. Central banks treat it as money. The system needs governments to stay in debt. If they paid everything off, the world would lose its most trusted financial instrument. The money supply would collapse. That's why governments keep issuing more debt, not recklessly but rhythmically. Debt becomes capitalism's heartbeat, pulsing through every mortgage, pension fund, and market. So when politicians promise to balance the budget or pay off the national debt, it's mostly an illusion. The goal isn't to eliminate debt. It's to keep it sustainable, serviceable, and believable. Because once belief collapses, numbers stop mattering. Confidence evaporates, rates explode, and the promise-based system stops. That's the real secret of sovereign debt. The plan was never repayment. The plan is to keep the world believing repayment is possible. It's a closed loop of trust. As long as trust holds, the numbers can stretch endlessly. But trust isn't equally distributed. Saying we owe it to ourselves is only half true. Interest payments don't flow evenly. They move upward, from workers and taxpayers to institutions and investors. Debt isn't just a transfer between countries, it's a transfer between classes. That's why inequality rises with indebtedness. The system rewards those who own debt, not those who pay it. It's the same story at every scale: households, nations, the entire planet. Creditors aren't villains, debtors aren't victims. They're two sides of one engine. The problem comes when the engine runs out of fuel, when new borrowing can't keep up with old promises. That's when the question, who is the creditor, stops being abstract and becomes personal. And at the top of this global pyramid, there isn't one villain. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. It's all of them, and us. Modern finance has turned debt into money itself. Governments issue it, banks multiply it, investors trade it, citizens depend on it. The line between debtor and creditor has dissolved. Debt once meant bondage. Today, it means balance. But if that balance ever tips, the illusion will collapse and we'll remember what debt really is. A promise that cannot last forever. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe.